Today, we're going to be talking about the key takeaways from Media Day for the Chicago Bulls. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzeils slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. So make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about Media Day for the Chicago Bulls. And I'm just going to be paraphrasing just what the players said and also to what AK and Billy Donovan said. So starting with AK and Billy Donovan. And so with AK, he was talking about looking to see how players are going to impact winning. He talked about playing style, and he referred back to last season. And so he talks about how this team finished at the end of the year, where they were ranked 14th on offense and then 9th on defense. And then he talked about, look, how they were happy to get Josh Giddey back. He said that he's also looking forward to seeing Coby White continue to grow as a leader. He feels like that both of those players have some real star potential. And he talks about Isaac Okoro and just how he brings toughness. And so Isaac Okoro is mentioned a couple of times here during the pressers here today. So we'll talk some more about him in a moment. But then next, he also talks about really, how this team is going to continue with player development and just looking to see players take that next step forward. He talked about just looking for this team to really, I think, get a defensive identity. And so he talked about being more physical and then also to trapping, picking up full court, going into zone, protecting the rim. And so those are things that they really want to get to on the defensive end. And something that was talked about a lot here during Media Day was just getting to a level of physicality. And so that seems to be the theme here for the Chicago Bulls. And then, with Billy Donovan, one of the things that he talks about is just kind of doing different things to try to get turnovers, which we'll talk a little bit more about what he said too. But continuing on here with AK, he also said that Coby White will be limited here because he did have a calf strain in August. And so they're kind of working him back slowly through training camp and preseason. The goal is to have him ready for the season. And look, they talked about the fact that they definitely love Coby White. They want him back and everything else. And so, that's kind of referring to, just questions about his looming free agency coming up. But one of the things that he also talks about, and I'm talking about AK, is just that right now the focus is just building while competing is the goal. Every decision is tied to that. And so that was AK and just paraphrasing what he had to say. The next, talking about Billy Donovan. And so, Billy Donovan talked about this. And so he was talking about like using like the whole roster this season. He talked about how the team played 10. And so I think that that's going to be very interesting to see just, how deep into the bench that Billy Donovan is going to like go this season. Like, I really want to see that, but he does mention that. And then also too, he talks about like the team needing to like generate more opportunities for themselves and like create possessions. And so, clearly one of the ways that you do that is you play better defense. And so, he's talking about getting deflections. He's talking about taking more charges. He's talking about how not everybody is built like Isaac Okoro, because I think that, they're indicating that like, hey, yes, he's going to bring, a defensive identity, to the Chicago Bulls, obviously, but not everybody can do what he does. And so it's just going to be like one of those defenses that just, it's really by committee. And so, I think that that's kind of what Billy Donovan was getting at right there. And then, they talked about Noe Essengue. And so with Noe Essengue, they said that, look, there's not really like any type of expectations really, other than, they want to try to build up his strengths. And so he needs to get better there. Also talked about like his shot form. He definitely likes it. And so he thought that that was something that obviously he's going to have to get better at as well. But he does talk about the fact that what they love about him is that he really knows how to play the game, even though he's so raw. And so, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Noe Essengue. We've been talking about this and just really, can he take the same type of jump like a Modest Buzeils? Would love to see it happen. But, that was Billy Donovan just saying there's not really expectations on him. And so, you can expect they're probably going to bring him along slowly. And so next, going into the players here and starting with Ayo Dosunmu. And so, Ayo Dosunmu, from what I've seen, it was a pretty short clip for him. And, I think that he was just talking about like, it was a pretty much a straightforward path to kind of get back and just really, how he's been working around clock to bring his shoulder back together and everything else. And he really believes in himself and thinks that he will find a way to be on the court to help this team, which I really do believe that with Ayo Dosunmu. And he was asked about his free agency as well. And he just was like, look, I'm just taking it one day at a time. Can't really worry about that. Just have to stay in the moment. And he was super excited to be, with the team, being out there for media day and everything else. And so that was Ayo Dosunmu. And next, with Vooch. And so the thing with Vooch, you just always love to hear what Vooch had to say. And so Vooch says that, look, rumors are part of the deal because he was asked about, just the trade rumors and everything else. And he was just like, look, you can only control what you can control. And he talked about really how he was happy to go out there and play for his national team. And so he loved that experience. And then now, also too, he was talking about how he still feels good and still feels like that he has a lot of good basketball left in him. And, he was asked about his role with the Chicago Bulls. And he said, like, look, nobody's told him that his role is going to change, coming into this season. And I love one of the questions. And it was like, look, a lot of people are forgetting that you had a good season last year. And so, I think a lot of people are already trying to write Vooch off, but I do think that he's going to have a very good year. And so Vooch, seems like that he's pretty present right now, not worrying about trade deadlines and all that stuff like that. So that was good to hear. And then Modest Buzeils, man, look, if you got a chance to listen to his presser, I think that Modest Buzeils, you just get pumped up just listening to him, because Modest Buzeils, I'm skipping right down to the biggest point that he had. He was like, look, I want to go out and I want to win the most improved player of the year award. Like, he said that is one of his individual goals. He said for the team, he was like, winning a championship. That's the benchmark for the team. And so I absolutely love that with Modest Buzeils. He really believes, in the team and the group of guys that, are there on the Chicago Bulls. And then I love this too. He's like, he was asked about like what's going to stand out this season for him. And he was like, my defense. My defense is going to be great. That's what's going to stick out. And he said that he wants to be coached like an all defensive player. And I love that. And so I love the fact that Modest Buzeils, man, is with all the smoke here. And he was like, look, he was like, yeah, in the media, you guys could call me out on that too, as he was leaving the podium here. And he also talked about physicality, which is something that the entire Bulls really talked about, I think, throughout the day, was physicality. He talked about getting to the weight room and then also to maintaining his speed. And he was just talking about, man, the energy is really good with the Chicago Bulls, and he feels like that they are set to really surprise some people this year. And so that was Modest Buzeils, talking about some things. He also did mention that he's been kind of working off just getting or setting screens, ball handling, and then kind of shooting off the dribble and things like that. And so we'll see how that plays out for Modest Buzeils this season. But man, it sounds like that he is going to have a very good season. And so I can't wait to see him out there. Next, with Josh Giddey. And so look, Josh Giddey, definitely, he's one of the guys that I think a lot of people were wanting to hear from, because you just wanted to hear how the negotiations went. And he was like, look, it was never a bad feeling. It was just negotiations. Like, it was just business. And so you love how Josh Giddey approached that. And he said that he always wanted to be with the Chicago Bulls. He's happy that he got a deal. And he said the number of and the years and everything else, like, that's part of business here. And he feels great, the fact that he's got 4 years locked in. And he was talking about, as players, you're trying to get to that next contract, and so Josh Giddey, he feels, grateful that he got to that. And he's in a situation that he's in right now with the Chicago Bulls. And he also talked about defense. And so he talked about how he improved on defense. And what I found interesting about what he said is that he was just like, he was talking about how he gets that much more engaged when he's going against the primary players on the opposing team. And he's saying that, not saying that he's not engaged, on defense, but he was like, that intensity, like, and really feeling that is something that I guess he's going to be up for the challenge this year. And he talked about like the team, they're going to have to do it by a committee. And so they did talk about physicality. And once again, he talked about defense as well. And so I'm curious to see if he's going to pick up really where he left off last season. And then lastly, with Coby White, and what he was talking about. And so Coby White does talk about the calf strain. He didn't feel like that's necessarily going to be a big deal. And he feels like that at the end of the day, what he wants to do is come in and just help the team win. He wants to be really a better leader and a teammate. He talked about that his personal goal is getting over 40% shooting the three ball. He feels like that he is a player that can get that done, and he should have did that already. He does talk about winning once more, and he talks about getting better, and he talks about how he went out and pretty much he changed his diet for a little bit, and so that was pretty funny to see that clip where he was talking about that. But he talks about working off ball and just really how that is going to help him this season. He talked about how he was kind of sharpening up his basketball handle here. And so, he's sounding like he's in a great place too, with free agency looming between him and Ayo Dosunmu. These guys seem very, very focused. And I just think that AK is probably going to hold on to these guys. And so that's just me kind of just betting on these guys still being here. But anyway, that was media day today. Again, you just got a lot of mentions here from Isaac Okoro. In fact, even Coby White mentioned him about how he was like taking charges in pickup and stuff like that. And so I can't wait to see that, man, because I think that Isaac Okoro, man, he's really going to help this team really get an identity. And I think like the biggest thing that I take from media day and just really what I heard is just like it seems like the team feels really great with what they have on the roster. And I think that they're just thinking now their next step is to just get an identity and defensively. And I love that. And because I think that if this team does get better on the defensive end, that is going to get you some more wins, and it is going to create some more offense for you there. So I just love the fact that this team is coming in and they are focused on defense, because I think that they feel really confident with what they were able to do on offense. And I think that in year two, they're going to be much better. And I think Billy Donovan talked about like, some of the turnovers and stuff like that. I do expect for this team to cut down the turnovers because they understand where to go with their reads and stuff like that. But the defense, that's going to be the big thing for this team. And so let's see what happens tomorrow. Training camp starts. And so I'm sure we'll be talking about, open runs or whatever they decide to do, along with just hearing some more from players and things like that. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments, what was your biggest takeaway from media day as it's here. The Chicago Bulls will start their training camp tomorrow. Can't wait to talk some more about it. But anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Bulls. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.